Okay, we had gone over some of this yesterday before class had ended. So one of the things we want to do is give you uh, a brief overview of a lot of these animals. If you can recognize them, it will certainly help you out. And remember, for instance, this was the Dictodon, and what we had said in class is a small burrowing animal. It's still reptilian. We certainly know that because what we see here is it's got claws, okay? It's got claws down here, it's got teeth, it's got dry scaly skin, and one of the characteristics of these is why was it so successful? Well, one is because it was small and it could burrow into the ground to escape predators. That would certainly be an advantage. And then with that, we said it probably gets a lot of its water from the food that it eats. Okay, it's also a tetrapod, and we had wrote down in class. Okay, so it's certainly adapted by being small. It could burrow into the ground. It was a tetrapod, and one of the things by living in groups, that would certainly be an evolutionary advantage to know when predators are going to be around. That would be one trait that it had. The second would be it has actually had a modified ear bone, so it could hear very well. Again, the Dictodon. Okay. Then we move on to this animal, and it might not look, I don't want to say quite as bright as it would up in class. And this was the Petrolacosaurus, okay? And with that, okay, what type of animal was it? Yeah, it's obviously a tetrapod because it has 4 limbs. It's certainly carnivorous because you can see that that's actually eating another insect, whether that's a Meganeura of some sort. But again, it's reptilian because it has teeth, it's got claws, and it certainly has dry scaly skin. Okay. One aspect is it's not tied to water, unlike previous animals like that of the Hynerpeton, which was more amphibian-like. Okay, and also its belly is a lot closer to the ground, and that was another characteristic until we get to that of the synapsids and the therapsids. So some characteristics. It was the first true breathing tetrapod. Again, it had tough, scaly skin, and its reproduction, it was fully on land because with that, their eggs had developed shells, unlike that of the amphibians. Okay, and again, it has claws and teeth. And we contrast that with this animal, which is the Hynerpeton. Okay, and we associate that with being more amphibian-like for a couple of reasons. One, it lacks teeth in here, and it's got toe pads instead of claws, and its skin is certainly smooth and not scaly like that of the Petrolacosaurus or even tetrapods that came after this animal. So its reproduction then was certainly tied to water because it does not have those protective shells. So this reproduction actually took place in the water. Okay. And still, nonetheless, it was a tetrapod. It was the first lung-breathing tetrapod that moved onto the land. And where did that come from? It actually evolved from the Cephalaspis. So what do we have next? Okay, here is your Gorgonopsid. Okay, some of the traits that gave it its success is that it was certainly the beginning of the therapsids, okay? And what that means is it's got a lot of mammalian characteristics, even though it lacks probably the intelligence of mammals, it lacks the hair and the fur of mammals, and it does have a 4-chambered heart, I'd be led to believe, so its metabolism would possibly be a little higher, but it's still not true warm-bloodedness like that of the mammals. But the limbs are placed more directly underneath, which is quite a bit more flexibility that gave them their speed to chase down prey items. So a gorgonopsid then is what we call a therapsid. Other characteristics, of course, it's a tetrapod. And for food gathering characteristics, it had certainly those large canines. Okay. And that flexible pelvis, again, because it's a therapsid. And another mammalian characteristic is that it had scent glands with it. Okay. Then we move on to another animal. This was the Hycoethes, and it's was called an evolutionary giant because it was the first vertebrate. Okay, this is a very early vertebrate. Okay, so with that, one of the aspects, it has a skeleton on the inside, which would give them a great mobility as opposed to having an exoskeleton like its prior counterparts, which would be your Brontoscorpio, which was a large scorpion, the Anomalocaris, and of course Meganeura. Those are all arthropods. Again, the first vertebrate was this animal, the Hycoethes. Okay, and that had evolved into this animal, which was the Cephalaspis. Okay, and its significance then would be that it had a shield head to protect that brain because it navigated by memory. So here we see the development of what we would consider intelligence. Okay, it had a cranium, it had memory, and since it's a fish, it would navigate by memory to do its reproduction. So it's obviously tied to water and has aquatic reproduction. Okay. Then we move forward to this one, which is a sailback, which is the first large, okay, tetrapod that moved on to land. But one aspect of this, okay, is that it's not carnivorous. Okay, it's actually going to be an herbivore. Okay, and with that, one problem with having this this sailback on here, it probably limited its mobility, so it wasn't very fast. But you got to remember, being cold-blooded would mean that it's going to take a while for its body temperature to warm up. So with that, still a tetrapod, it was an herbivore, and it has this sailback on its back, Adaposaurus, that it would take a while for its body temperature to warm up. So it was the first large reptile, but again, it was still herbivorous. So when we say passive heat, it could regulate its body temperature very easily by tilting this towards the sun and absorb heat, or move to the shade, and all that blood flow is going in there to dissipate heat then. And it's what we consider the first synapsid. Okay, what that means then is these eyeballs are more so fixed into a cranium socket. Okay, and with that, that actually increases its jaw musculature. Even though it's an herbivore, it's still the first large tetrapod to move onto the land, much bigger than its counterparts of what we had seen here. The Hynerpeton, which was still amphibian-like, and certainly the Petrolacosaurus, much bigger than those animals. Okay. Then we move on to the first arthropod in this presentation, and this was the largest insect. It was Meganeura, so obviously it can fly because it's got wings on there. Okay, and one of the reasons it got to grow so large was, of course, because the oxygen content was so much higher when it was present on Earth. Okay, so that's why it could essentially grow so large, was because there was so much oxygen present. And then once the amount of oxygen started to downsize, started to diminish, well then the insect would also have to downsize as well. Okay. Then we move on to this arthropod, which was it was the second one that we're introduced to. The first one was the Anomalocaris, which had the first jaw, but in this case, this was the first arthropod to move onto land, and it was Brontoscorpio. Okay, so it was certainly an aquatic predator, again an arthropod, but one of the things, it started in water as an aquatic predator, but eventually moved on to land. But upon doing so, okay, it eventually had to downsize, much like the Meganeura had to as well. There just wasn't enough oxygen present to support that large body size. Okay, I don't want to be going too terribly long. I see we're up to 10 minutes, so I'll perhaps go through one more animal. Okay, and here we see we've got the Dimetrodon. Okay, so how could we contrast the carnivores, the top carnivores of that time frame? Well, in this case, the only one you could contrast that to would be the Gorgonopsid. And again, this is a sailback, just like it's the Adaposaurus was, but in this case, you've got these large teeth in here. So the Dimetrodon, which meant two-toothed then, which meant it was a top carnivore. But unlike the Gorgonopsid, it wasn't a therapsid because its belly is not as high off the ground and its limbs are not more directly underneath him. So it probably wasn't very fast, but certainly had the tools to survive. But once the dinosaurs did arrive, these probably went extinct because they were just not fast enough to escape predators. Okay, just like the Adaposaurus, even though it's a large vertebrate, having this on here, it probably limited its mobility, so probably slowed it down. As we know, speed is going to be one of those aspects. If you're not fast enough to outrun predators, you're probably going to become extinct, and that's what had probably happened to the species of Dimetrodon. Still a tetrapod, but in this case, the first very large carnivore. Predates the Gorgonopsid, so again, a very large carnivore. So I think I want to stop with that, and I will go through and name all of these animals again and take a little bit of time so you can go back through and name these if you so choose. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, again, the Dictodon, the Petrolacosaurus, the Hynerpeton, the Gorgonopsid, the Hycoethes, the Cephalaspis, the Adaposaurus, Meganeura, Brontoscorpio, then finally Dimetrodon. I think that's enough. With a little bit of luck, we'll be back in school tomorrow, and we can continue with this Before the Dinosaurs, which is quite a bit of your final, which again will be a week from tomorrow, Wednesday, December 21st. It's the last final given, which I believe is from 12:50 to 2 o'clock. All right, that's all I have. I'll catch up to you next time.